Imagine, and happy Sunday, a new month of May that we find ourselves in today. Summer is literally right around the corner, and we see that people are getting vaccinated, restrictions are slowly being lifted as this world is emerging and beginning to slowly reopen. And our prayer for you, Imagine, is that you would also find yourselves emerging into this new season with a reopening of your heart in new and in fresh ways yet experienced before. I am excited to be here with you this morning to worship together and to hear the word together. I'm excited for next week, Mother's Day, a time where we will celebrate and honor the mothers virtually from afar and all. But the following Sunday, May 16th, the third Sunday of this month, we're going to be back at the Sandbox for another in-person drive-in experience. It'll be back at the Sandbox, 6 p.m. in our designated parking stalls and all to ensure your health and your safety, of course. And it'll be a special time to come together in the evening, to be together, socially distanced and all. And so we look forward to doing that with you, not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, May 16th. Imagine, would you be well this morning? Would you experience a grounding peace and kindness as we move forward together?
You will never leave. Your love sustains me before I even knew what love was. You brought me here to rest. You've given me space to breathe. So I'll stand still until it sinks in. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. Oh yeah. Said I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. That's who you are, it's who you are. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. And now I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. And I'm breathing deep of all your goodness, your loving kindness to me. And now I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. And I'm breathing deep of all your goodness, your loving kindness to me. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. consuming fire, my heart's desire. Oh, how I need you more, a fresh outpour with no resistance. I give permission, so come now and take my heart. This life is yours. Come fill me up, Holy Ghost. Shine bright into the whole world. Cause your love, your love. Come set me on a holy fire. Burn right into the whole world. Find your love, your love. Consuming fire, consuming fire. My heart's desire. Oh, how I need more, a fresh outpour with no resistance. I give permission, so come now and take my heart. This life is yours. Come fill me up, Holy Ghost. Shine bright into the whole world. Cause your love, your love. Come set me on a holy fire. Burn right into the whole world. Find your love, your love. This is my one desire, and only this I seek, to be a living fire, consume completely. This is my one desire, and only this I seek, to be a living fire, consume completely. This is my one desire, and only this I seek, to be a living fire, consume completely. Come fill me up, Holy Ghost. Shine bright into the whole world. Cause your love, your love. Come set me on a holy fire. Burn right into the whole world. Find your love, your love. Come fill me up, Holy Ghost. Shine bright into the whole world. Cause your love, your love. Come set me on a holy fire. Burn right into the whole world. Find your love, your love.
All right. I want to jump right into the sermon, these proverbs, and what I'm going to talk about today. And I want to talk about jealousy, about envy, about comparison, and why it's so important for us to focus on what we're doing. And I think this conversation is especially important as we continue to work through, even as we start to come out of socially this pandemic. I think it's been a prime time in this hyper focus year where it's so easy to live with comparison and envy and to get lost in what other people are doing because we're all home and it's so easy to just be on our phones or on our computers seeing what others are doing or have been doing, right? How many people have found themselves at different points this year seeing what others are doing, creating, who they're with, where they're going, and there's moments where it just you tighten up and there's envy and can be anger and there can be feeling bad about what we're doing. This is why these proverbs today have something so timely and so liberating and so powerful to tell us. So I want to start with Proverbs 24:27, right? Proverbs are these ancient wisdom sayings, right? It's not, here's an absolute truth, and this is how it always is, and this is a truth etched into the universe. You know, it's an ancient sage saying, let me give you some practical guidance for living as a whole, alive, creative, free, loving human being. So here's this first thing, Proverbs. There's these two proverbs that seem disconnected, but I want to show you how they're actually more connected than we think. Proverbs 24:27. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. Right? We're always we're drawing metaphors and analogies from what we see, right? So he's looking at an agrarian culture, people building a house, people building a living, etc. He says, put your outdoor work in order, get your fields ready, and after that, then you build your house. Right? This is a proverb about priorities and about order. This is about making sure the ground will sustain you before you build on the ground. This is about focusing on the foundation of your whole life before you build a house on top of it. Right? So we can even say, as we zoom out and think about what this means for us today, this is about choosing substance before hype. This is about choosing authenticity before attention. This is about choosing to be real even before you're recognized. This is about developing character before you develop a career. Right? So sometimes I look at our culture and I think to myself, people learn how to brand themselves before they even have anything to brand. Or I would say that's so important, and it's challenging because of this. We live in a culture where people want to put their work in public before they've put the work in private. People want to put their work in public before they put the work in private. Now, how many people have heard of that famous Malcolm Gladwell idea or rule of 10,000 hours? Right? Malcolm Gladwell, this cultural writer, has written some massive books, and he has this theory, this idea of putting in your 10,000 hours. And it's this general rule: if you put 10,000 hours of practice into something, then technically you can become an expert in that thing. And what's amazing, if you break down 10,000 hours, to put 10,000 hours into something, that would be doing something for 40 hours a week for 5 years. Or that would be doing something for 20 hours a week for 10 years. Or it would be doing something, that's it, right? For the numbers I have. We think about 20 hours a week for 10 years. There's some people who are like, I stopped drinking soda for a month and I worked out twice. Where's my six pack? Right? A month without soda should have done it. Malcolm Gladwell is saying 10,000 hours, 20 hours a week for 10 years, and then you will be a master of something. Now, that doesn't break down to an exact science, obviously. It's more of a general idea. But here's what that shows us. Quality takes time. In your creative life, learning what it means to love, in your interpersonal relationships, in a deep life with God, in education, quality takes time. And we have to trust God enough to allow the time to unfold in a natural pace to actually be people who have quality. Now, there's this famous comedian named Jerry Seinfeld, had one of the most massive television shows of all time. It was a show that was so big where in 1998, right, over 20 years ago, in 1998, based on his contract with the show and how big it was, he made $278 million in 1998, in that year alone, and he continues to bring in an insane amount of money. But what's interesting is the work ethic he still puts into his comedy. There's a story about this young comic named Brad Isaac years and years ago, who happened to be at a same club performing and doing a set where Jerry Seinfeld was. And after his set, or whenever it was, they ran into each other in the back. And Brad Isaac, who's coming up, asks Jerry Seinfeld, they start talking, and he asks him, what advice do you have for a young comic who's coming up? And then Jerry Seinfeld said, at the beginning of every year, I put one of those those big calendars, like a big whiteboard calendar on my wall. He says, and every day that I write, that I take the time to sit down when no one's around and actually write new jokes, I put a red X on it. Then the next day, I'll put a red X on the day where I actually sat down to write. He said, pretty soon I will see a chain of red X's with every day that I write. And he said, the one piece of advice I would give you is your job is to never break that chain. He simply tells him to forget about the results, forget where you're going. If you put in the time and write every day and create that chain where you are putting the work in private before you put it in public, that is what is going to prepare you the most. And I think what that proverb shows us about building a foundation, what Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours and what Jerry Seinfeld's sort of anecdotal story was for this young comedian, it shows us this. In our creative, in our vocational, in our life of work, it's not about finishing a product. It's about learning to have faith during the process. Our life cannot only be tied to how successful a finished product is. We have to learn to have faith, to fall in love with, to trust, to enjoy, to wrestle, and to struggle, and have faith during the process of the 10,000 hours and of putting in our time in private. Proverbs 24, remember it said, before you do those things, before you build your house, get your other stuff in order. And there's a different proverb that seems disconnected, but I want to show you how they really are connected. Proverbs 27:4 says this, anger is cruel and fury overwhelming. How many people have ever been overwhelmed by anger and fury? Anger is cruel and fury overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? It's as if the writer's saying, anger and fury and rage, how insane that is? He's like, in the end and in the long term, those things are not even as dangerous or as insidious as jealousy. The reason why there's a proverb about getting your house in order before you build, and this one about jealousy. The reason why these two seemingly disconnected proverbs are actually more connected than we realize is that one of the main reasons it's so hard to be patient and to focus on the substance of who we are and the quality of our work is envy and jealousy and comparison. How many people feel that already, right? It's hard to just focus on what I'm doing when I'm constantly comparing myself to what they're doing. It's hard for me to look at where I am and feel good when every time I see where they are, I feel bad. It's hard for me to experience joy with what I have when I am constantly feeling envy whenever I see what they have. Anger is cruel and fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Now, how many of you have ever been involved in an invisible war? How many people of you have ever in your head been involved in invisible wars? I get this phrase invisible wars from this podcast called Fun with Dumb that I've listened to. Now, Fun with Dumb is a podcast that's hosted by a guy named Dumbfounded, named Jonathan Park. And Dumbfounded kind of came up as a battle rapper. He's a rapper, he makes music, he's also an actor. He's been involved in all kinds of things. And for whatever the reasons are, I followed his journey for 10 years. He's just an artist I really, really like. You know, he's someone I really root for. Whenever he succeeds, whenever I see him in projects, like he was in a couple episodes of Power, or I see him, he's good friends with Aquafina, so he was in, you know, I don't know how many episodes of hers, Nora from Queens, her show on Comedy Central, and I love his music. He's just a guy I really root for and really like. And he was in his podcast, I forget what episode it was, he had on there Bobby Lee, who's an actor, used to be on Mad TV, stand-up comic, hilarious. He has a podcast called Tiger Belly. And another guy named Bobby Hundreds, who, actually, I assume that's probably not his real name, but Bobby Hundreds is the creator of the brand The Hundreds, which is like a streetwear brand that's been around for a long time, super successful. And as they were talking, they brought up, Bobby Hundreds said, you know, I have in my head what are called invisible wars. And here's how, after what they're saying, and I feel like it's such a universal thing, here's how I would explain it. Invisible wars are a fight we have going on in our heads with somebody else. It's just that they never know it. Do you understand what I'm talking about? It's this ongoing battle and fight and push and pull relationship we have with somebody from a distance who we might not even know personally, or maybe talk to once, and they would never have any idea how much space they occupy in our minds and in our imaginations. How many people know what I'm talking about, right? You already think of the people you have invisible wars with. It's the people you pay attention to and kind of criticize in your mind and don't like, but also you keep paying attention to what they're doing. And on a serious level, oftentimes when you go down a wormhole or pay attention to what they're doing, you end up feeling worse, negative, not happy with where you are, angry with where you're at, angry with them or whatever, right? So they all go on and they start talking about these invisible wars they have. You know, Bobby Hundreds is talking about how he has beef with, I'm just gonna call him that, how he has beef with Steve Aoki, right? The famous, you know, DJ. And he says, yeah, when I used to work for Complex, I went up to interview him while he was doing a set. And while he was doing his set, and I asked him a question. He said, hey man, like, watch out, you bump my table. And then Bobby was like, and ever since that moment, I basically hated him. And he has this ongoing invisible war with him in his head. And then Dumbfounded said, I don't know why I've just always had this invisible war with the actor John Cho. And he goes, also I have this invisible war with Jeremy Lin. He goes, like, I don't know why, I just hate on him from a distance, even though I know if either one of them was cool with me, I would probably love them and be so happy to know them. We have these invisible wars with people. Can you think of those people? I've had those experiences in my life where when I see what that guy's posting with his group of friends, and maybe they're all pastors and they go on this trip together, and there's just this tight-knit sense of community and support from other pastors his age, something I've lacked and haven't had in the same way. And when I would see that over the years, it would just like trigger something in me where my ego contracts. It's like my heart just tightens up for a second and just kind of hits me. Like in that episode, Bobby Lee was talking about a comedian who started blowing up who he had an invisible war with. And Bobby Lee said, every time I saw a photo of him on Instagram, it would send a chill down my spine. And here's what I would say about those invisible wars and this whole experience of comparison and focusing on what we do. In those moments and in those relationships, we think it's about what they have, but it's really about who we are. At the deepest level, it's not about what they have and what they're doing. It's about who we are and what God has called and invited us to do. Right? It's not about anybody else. It's about you trusting who God says you are. It's about you owning your journey. It's about you discovering and loving and knowing your voice. It's about you recognizing the unique contribution that only you can make in this world. It's about you knowing who you are, focusing on what you're doing right now to grow, to change, and to experience God in a new way, and to give yourself in a way that is good and real and authentic to you. We think it's about what they have, but it's really just about who we are. Proverbs 18:10 says, "The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe." Trying to keep up with others is not our key to success. Secretly competing with other people in invisible wars is not what wisdom looks like. Comparison is never going to set you free. Trying to prove yourself is not going to help you enjoy the work you are doing in the relationships you have. But that fortified tower, turning to God as the only one who can save you, validate you, and define you, is a part of the ultimate path towards wisdom and towards growth and towards learning to love what you're doing, what you're building, how you're serving, how you're helping, and what you're making. And I want to end with two thoughts. I want to end with one that is a deeper level of transformation, and I want to end with the other one, which is a very practical thing we can all do right now today to take steps away from these invisible wars and these spaces of comparison, or not feeling confident or good enough to just put the work in that we know we have to do. First one is this: every impulse to compare ourselves with others is also an invitation to connect deeper with God, right? This is the real transformation connection level. There is a path of constant comparison, crippling envy, and trying to compete with others for a sense of validation. But there is another path of wisdom, the Jesus way, one where we can focus on the substance and quality of our own work, a path where we discover our own and recognize our own gifts, where we're waking up to the life-changing fact that nobody else can give the world what I can give. And my only job is to do that. See, this is a path that's defined by us knowing the value we already have as children of God before we accomplish anything. So just know every impulse to try to compete and to compare ourselves, imagine when we're trying to get sucked into that visible war, the Spirit of God is this voice saying, hey, you don't have to go fight them over there. Just see me, trust that I see you, and just come deeper into this and go deeper into your work. I'm with you in the work you're doing. You don't have to go compete with them. Every impulse to compete with others is an invitation to hear the beckoning of the Spirit that says, I'm with you, I'm in your work, all of life is right here. Let's just let those other people be and learn to love what we're doing. The second thing, this is a much more practical, right? That one's more heart space level, deep. Let me trust the Spirit of God when I want to compete. But as people who are on the journey towards that, we also need practical things that can help us not get caught up in that. Well, because we don't always have the strength to resist. The invisible wars are too powerful. They pull us in, all right? They're too damn powerful. They suck us in sometimes. Here's what I would say on a practical level with those invisible wars. Think about who those people are. Think about the people you compete with, you compare yourself to, that you keep returning to. The people who occupy so much space in your mind in ways they'll never know. These are the people that we wrestle with. These are invisible wars. Here's one thing. Just stop paying attention. There are some people on Instagram you should unfollow. if they are a triggering source of envy and jealousy and grasping and feeling the need to compete, and if by the time you're done looking at their stuff, you feel worse about yourself, just stop paying attention. And I know it's hard, so there's just some people you probably should unfollow, some people you should not look at on Facebook, some people you shouldn't watch on TikTok, some people you shouldn't Google them and pay attention to what they're doing. If paying attention to them and watching everything they do ends up with you feeling worse, then these are people we just need to stop paying. It's like the invisible war crushes us. Stop showing up to the battle. You don't have to go. You don't have to go. On a practical level, there's some people where they're just not good for you to follow because it's too hard not to get sucked in. And I would say this: don't let someone's online presence pull you away from your purpose. A waste of time. Don't let someone's online presence pull you away from your purpose. It's about you putting in the work in private. It's about you focusing on quality. It's about you trusting in God as the fortified tower. It's about you connecting that chain, like Seinfeld said. It's about you putting in the 10,000 hours, and it's about you trusting in the voice God gave you.
And
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And the community of Imagine says, Amen.
I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. Is the garment of our courage, the power to make the peace we long to know. Open up our eyes to see the wounds that bind all of humankind. May our shudder hearts greet the dawn of light with charity and love. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my into the face of my enemy, I see my brother.